Hello, guys. I am Javier Saleh from Appatch Jumpstart, and I will be teaching the basics of music production. To start, I'll probably go over the equipment that you guys are going to need to get to start music production. So number one, of course, is a laptop or a computer. Self-explanatory naman. Number two, you will need a DAW or a digital audio workstation or workspace. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but something like that. My recommendations for that, number one would be Logic Pro X is what I use and probably what you're seeing right now on screen. Number two would be GarageBand, which is a simpler version of Logic Pro. I like these two because they're super duper simple and easy to understand. So perfect for beginners and it looks super clean. So if you want to post them on your IG story or something, it's gonna look nice. Another recommendation would be FL Studio. This is the basic one if you really want to get into it. I think it's free. I'm not completely sure about it, but that's what I started with like way back and played around with. So I recommend that. And the last one is Ableton Live Lite. It's the best free one in my opinion. It looks kind of ugly, but the workflow with it is super good and it's easy to understand. You will also need plugins. The plugins usually they come with the AWs themselves. So for example, if you go with software instruments in Logic, you open this. These are all of the default plugins that you get with your DAW. So you can really get by with just the default plugins already, like when you're just starting and trying to figure things out. But if I were to recommend any that you could download, I'd recommend the Native Instruments Complete Control or Native Access and the Spitfire Audio Labs. Spitfire Audio is free, I think, and it contains a lot of really unique sounds like oriental strings and weird synths that they use in movies and stuff. So super unique sounds that you could use. Lastly, if you already have instruments and microphones at home and you want to use those to make music as well, I'd recommend you buy a MIDI keyboard. So for example, this one is a MIDI keyboard. This is the one that everyone honestly has. The Akai MIDI keyboard. It just gives you a tactile way to play your virtual instruments, because if you don't use this, you can use naman your laptop or your PC's keyboard to simulate a keyboard. So for example, here you can press Command K. It opens up the musical typing. So like that, you can play the instrument on your keyboard. And other than that, the MIDI keyboard, it can also edit on the fly, and so you don't have to keep switching from your keyboard to your laptop continuously. And it also has drum pads, like here. You can see it. Yeah, like a vlogger. So if you like playing your drums like what I do on your keyboard, it's super useful for that. And the other thing I'd recommend is a audio interface. So this is mine. It's really small, but probably the most used thing among my hardware. If you want to connect your microphone or your instruments like your guitars, etc., I'd recommend you get an audio interface. But if you're not super sold yet on making music, but you want to try connecting a guitar or a mic, I'd suggest you buy a mixer instead. Mixers are a lot cheaper and they do the same job more or less, but with like a bit less audio quality. But they get the job done naman. And if you're in a band setup with multiple people playing instruments at the same time, mixers are really the way to go. So yeah, optional, not really needed, but would be helpful. Again, the MIDI keyboard and audio interface. That's the equipment you're gonna need. And now we're gonna move on to the basic song structure, in my opinion, according to me at least. So whenever I make music, I like to keep 4 things in mind whenever I make the basics of a beat. So number one, and probably most important, is the main chord progression. So for me, I have zero knowledge of music theory and like I have 0 chords memorized on any instrument more or less. So I just really play around and just do random stuff on the on the keyboard. But then what's also helpful, what I heard from like my producer friends, they have a cheat sheet. Some of them, and they use it as their desktop background. So it contains a lot of different chords on the piano or like on the guitar that you can play, and you just mix and match them, try to find stuff that sounds good, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. There's no going around that. So yeah, for example, in this one, I just did some random playing on the keys and I ended up with this. So yeah, that's the basic structure of my song. And you see it continues throughout the entire project, more or less. So okay, once you have that, we go into the fun part, which is making the percussion or the drums. For me, the drums are the most fun because it gives direction to your song, to your beat, or whatever you're making. Because different types of percussion can make different types of music. So for example, this one, I tried to make it a more upbeat and happy type of song. So yeah, it's super upbeat. And then, so yeah, to match the type of song I'm going for. So the basic elements of percussion, I think, is your kick, your snare, and your hi-hats. So I can't really describe each one, but like, yeah, kick, snare, hi-hats is what you're gonna need. There are some songs don't really need hi-hats, but it's up to your discretion as like a creative decision. So I like to do when I make my drums, I like to play it on my MIDI. So for Logic Pro, I use the Ultra Beat sampler. So like here, I put in sounds that I download off the internet. Oh yeah, that's the biggest like tip from me, I guess, when making drums is download drum packs off the internet because they're the most useful things ever. So for example here, I got so many drum packs so you can just mix and match different kicks, snares, and hats and percussions from these things. So I like to play it on my MIDI, my drum pad. But then other people could be useful to you. I tried it before, but it didn't really work out for me. They like to make it manually. So they drag and drop. So for example, get a kick, and then you just drag it onto the track. And then you can be very meticulous with your placing of where each sound is gonna be. This is super useful if you're gonna mix your own tracks, but for me, it's less natural and I don't really like it, but some people do, and respect their opinion. So after the percussion, I find next important to be the bass because I'm a bassist at heart. I started music by playing the bass, and I feel like the bass adds a lot of depth to the song and a whole new dimension to it. So this is the for bass, you can play it. You can plug in your own bass if you have one, or you can play your virtual instrument. There are a lot of nice bass virtual instruments out there. So this is the bass I did. I plugged my own bass into it. Yeah, so I just play the root note of the main chord progression most of the time and just add a bit of embellishments, etc. on top. So putting it together is like the song sounds a lot more full with the bass. So there's a reason why speakers advertise having good bass capabilities. So yeah, moving on from the bass, the last thing that I like to add is the lead instrument. So it's the thing that captures people's attention first. So it's usually a higher frequency compared to the rest of the song. So the rest of the song, so like the bass, the percussion, and the main chord progression, I think of that as the foundation, and then these things are more of the embellishments and the things you add on top. So for this song, I added, sorry, let me move here. Here, I added some synth here, and I added a guitar as well on top. So, and these keys, sorry pala. Yeah, so when you're making these lead instruments, it's really good to go for catchy and earworm type of melodies, and just layer them on top of each other in a way that sounds good. That's the lead instrument. And then once you're done adding all these things and like playing around with different synths and etc., you can add vocals if you choose to go down that road. My tip, if you're not confident in your singing ability, like me, because I'm not really a singer, I don't know how to sing, is to layer your vocals as much as possible. You have a bass layer, you have a higher layer, you have a falsetto. So even if you're not confident in your abilities, like individually, but you put it all together, it's gonna sound pretty good, from my experience at least. So sneak peek na lang on like a future song that I might release. This is what it sounds like putting it all together.
Yeah. Sour like some lemonade, your face yellow tinted like a sunny day. I run away from the hurting and the hurricanes on my way to your place. Flowers on the porch.
So yeah, that is it, like put together. But like if you hear me singing solo, it sounds pretty bad. So like it sounds like this. So yeah, I'm really struggling to sing that. But if you put it together, it sounds like it's natural or something like that. So yeah, that basically covers like how to make songs and stuff. Just try to be as creative as possible is what my biggest tip. And then another tip is to, in regards to like the music production side, is to keep the beat as dynamic as possible. So switch things up throughout the song. Change the chord progression, change the drum patterns, etc. Add some instruments, remove some instruments. So there's the example here. After this is the chorus, so it's like the same chord progression. And then I got the drums here and I focus on the bass. Oh no, the bass should be here. Sorry, here. So this is the bass. Then I remove the hi-hats, etc. And I add some instruments as well. So try to make it as dynamic, as engaging as possible for the listener. Thanks for watching, guys. If I have anything to plug, I guess watch out for this song. I'm currently mixing it and it might come out this year or next year. And also watch out for a song that I'm going to release with Gabi Marshall from SPR. We performed it at Talent Gig Night, but it's coming real soon as well. So thank you.